He saved the alien girl from the fire, and the reward was worth it. Cale had been in stranger places, though not many. The air of Veara always smelled faintly like burnt cinnamon and fresh metal, which meant he either wanted dessert or a tetanus shot, depending on the hour. He had meant for this trip to be simple. Land, unload crates of starfruit, sell the spare engine parts he'd bartered off a drunk freighter captain, and leave before the locals remembered they didn't particularly like humans. But simplicity rarely survived first contact with Cale's luck. The marketplace had been lively that morning. Rows of stalls shimmered beneath floating lamps that shifted colors with the breeze. Vendors shouted about glowing silks and crystal knives. And the alien citizens of Veara moved through it all, with their long ears twitching in conversation. Cale had been halfway through haggling for a bottle of fizzing orange liquid that promised improved spinal alignment when the first crack split the sky. It wasn't thunder. The sound was sharper, the kind that goes straight into the bones. A second later, flames burst out from the energy spires that ringed the market square. Sparks rained down like furious stars. A wall of smoke rolled in, thick and fast, and suddenly the tidy rows of stalls turned into chaos. People screamed. Vendors bolted. That bottle Cale had been eyeing shattered on the ground, fizzling uselessly. Most would have run, and Cale was not above admitting that he had strongly considered it. He had a small ship, a cargo hold filled with goods still intact, and absolutely no heroic obligations to anyone on this planet. But then he heard it, a single voice calling out, muffled under the collapsing wood and steel of a burning stall. Not a cry for help exactly, more like a shocked gasp, the kind someone makes when they realize they are very, very stuck. Cale muttered a few choice curses about how this was not his problem, and how he had very delicate lungs unsuited to inhaling smoke. Then, because his legs clearly didn't listen to his brain, he plunged forward into the haze. The heat struck first, searing against his skin like he had stepped too close to a malfunctioning thruster. The world narrowed to ash and glowing embers, but there, beneath a collapsed framework of metal poles and silks aflame, he saw her. She was pinned at the waist, her long ears twitching weakly, her hands clawing against the ground in futile effort. Of course, Cale muttered to himself. Save one damsel in distress, get free tetanus. My mother would be so proud. He pushed at the wreckage. The beam was heavier than it looked, and for a moment he suspected the universe had set up this entire disaster just to see how many sarcastic things he could say before dying of smoke inhalation. With a groan and more cursing, he got the beam up high enough to drag her out. She was lighter than he expected, almost startlingly so, as though gravity clung to her less tightly than it did to him. When he carried her out into the open square, the fire was still raging, but the crowd had formed a ring at a safe distance. Alien citizens with glimmering eyes and sharp postures watched as Cale staggered forward with their own pressed to his chest. Their expressions were unreadable, shock, suspicion, maybe both. But the young woman in his arms clung to him, trembling. Her fingers curled into his jacket, as though afraid he might vanish if she let go. Cale knelt, setting her down gently on a patch of stone, not yet blackened by flame. She coughed, her long ears quivering with each breath. Her gaze locked onto him, unblinking. For a second he thought she might faint, but instead she spoke, her voice thin yet steady. Why would you do this? Cale blinked. Do what? Haul you out of the barbecue. Well, call me sentimental, but I figured leaving you there would make for a lousy vacation memory. Her lips twitched. Maybe a smile, maybe a grimace. It was hard to tell through the soot streaking her face. Around them, the crowd murmured. He could hear the whispers, though not the words. Their eyes darted between her and him, suspicion flaring like a second fire. He knew that look. It was the same one he got in half the ports he visited. Human, outsider trouble. He shifted uncomfortably, wishing for the comfort of his ship's pilot chair. But her gaze didn't leave him. She reached out, her hand surprisingly steady now, brushing at the soot on his sleeve. No one has ever risked so much not for me. Cale opened his mouth to argue that actually, it hadn't been that much. Just a little smoke, a heavy beam, maybe third-degree burns on his forearms if he was unlucky. But the words caught. Something in her tone wasn't casual. It was like she'd spoken a vow. Behind them, another crash shook the air as part of the marketplace roof gave way, showering sparks. Cale coughed, waved the smoke away, and muttered, "Great. I saved one life and ruined my lungs in the process. That's just efficient." Her fingers tightened on his sleeve, as if she didn't want him to leave. Her eyes, though rimmed red from the smoke, never wavered. Whatever fire still raged around them, he had the sudden, distinct, and very inconvenient sense that the real blaze had just started, and it wasn't one he could run away from. Cale woke to the sound of coughing, which, given the circumstances, he was fairly sure wasn't his own this time. The small medical bay smelled faintly like antiseptic, and strongly like burnt hair. His arms itched with healing patches. His lungs still felt like someone had scrubbed them with sandpaper. But otherwise he was alive, annoyingly so, considering how hard the fire had tried. Across the room, sitting on the edge of a cot, was the girl he dragged out of the flames. Elora, though he didn't know her name yet. Her long ears twitched as she drank water from a translucent vessel, every motion oddly precise, like she'd been taught to sip with dignity even while covered in soot. She noticed his gaze and tilted her head. "You survived." Cale grunted, disappointed. Her lips curved just slightly, though he wasn't sure if it was amusement or pity. Most humans don't walk into fire. Even fewer walk back out. Yeah, well, most humans don't land here to begin with. I've always been terrible at statistics. He swung his legs over the edge of his cot, wincing as his knees protested. "So, you're welcome, by the way." She blinked, as though he'd spoken an alien dialect, then inclined her head. "Yes, I owe you my life." Cale waved her off. "Nah, you don't owe me anything. Unless you've got a spare crate of snacks, in which case, yes, definitely life debt. Preferably salted." She tilted her head again, ears flicking with curiosity. "You risked everything." "Why?" "Bad reflex," Cale said. "I see someone screaming under debris, my brain goes, oh sure, let's go inhale smoke and ruin the resale value of our lungs. Been like that since childhood. It's a condition. Don't worry, not contagious." That earned him a small laugh, light and quick, almost like she hadn't done it in years. The door slid open with a hiss. Two older aliens stepped in, their ears longer, their eyes sharper. Robes shimmered faintly with embedded tech, little threads of light pulsing in the fabric. They looked at Elora first, then at Cale, and their gazes landed on him like a weight. "This is the human," one of them asked, voice low. Elora nodded. "He saved me." The two elders exchanged a glance that said much without words. Suspicion, calculation, maybe a pinch of annoyance. Cale had seen that look on merchants who discovered someone had bargained too cleverly. He raised a hand in a little wave. "Hi. Yes. Cale. Professional idiot. Happy to be here." The taller elder's ears twitched downward, a gesture Cale suspected meant something between disapproval and mild nausea. "Your actions will be remembered." "That sounds ominous," Cale muttered. "Do I get a medal, or just my name on a plaque that says, 'Don't try this at home'?" They ignored him and addressed Elora. "You must rest. The city has suffered. The spires are weakened. Sabotage is suspected." At that, Elora's expression tightened, and Cale caught something flicker in her gaze. Not fear, something heavier. But before he could ask, the elders guided her out of the room, leaving him alone with his thoughts and the faint smell of antiseptic. Later, when Cale slipped out of the medical bay in search of something edible, he found Elora waiting near the docking platforms. Her clothes had been changed, her face scrubbed clean, but the faint streaks of ash clung to her hair like stubborn memories. "You're following me," Cale said, balancing a half-stale ration bar in one hand. "I wanted to see you," she answered simply. He raised an eyebrow. "Most people want to avoid me. Safer that way. My last traveling companion ended up owing me money and a new coat." "I do not owe you a coat," she said quickly, as if worried he was serious. "Relax. Joke." He bit into the ration bar and winced. "Okay, half-joke. I'd accept a coat if you've got one that resists smoke." Elora watched him chew, her head tilting again. "You do not act like the others." "Good. The others sound boring." She didn't laugh this time. Her voice dropped lower. You don't understand. No one has ever pulled me from danger. Not once. They would not dare. Cale swallowed, resisting the urge to ask the obvious question. He had a feeling she wouldn't answer directly anyway. Instead, he leaned back against a cargo crate. Maybe you're just not used to humans. We're reckless. Comes with the short ears. All the sense falls out. Her ears twitched at that, and she finally smiled. Not faintly, not hidden, an actual smile, bright enough to catch the glow of the docking bay lights. Cale looked away quickly, because the last thing he needed was to get attached to someone whose entire city already suspected him of being a walking problem. Which, to be fair, he was. A voice shouted from across the bay, calling Ellara's name. She turned, ears lifting sharply. Cale caught it this time, the name. Ellara. It suited her somehow, sharp and soft all at once. She lingered a moment longer, her eyes never leaving him. We will speak again. Cale sighed as she walked away, muttering to himself. Oh, great. Now I'm on a first-name basis with trouble. Just perfect. He took another bite of the ration bar and grimaced. Yep, definitely doomed. Cale had a simple rule. When locals start whispering about you, it's time to either leave or start charging for autographs. On Veara, neither option seemed viable. Every corridor he walked through carried the echo of hushed voices, long ears twitching as though relaying gossip faster than light. Apparently saving Ellara had earned him more attention than smuggling contraband fruit ever had. He found Ellara again in a garden, suspended high above the city. The ground was a network of glowing tiles, and plants pulsed with faint bioluminescence, as if the stars themselves had taken root. Ellara stood at the center, fingers brushing against the leaves. She looked calmer here, though her ears betrayed tension, twitching back and forth like anxious antennae. You shouldn't be here, she said without turning. Story of my life, Cale replied. Half the planets I land on, someone tells me that within 5 minutes. Sometimes 2, if I open my mouth early. She finally faced him. They watch you. They don't trust you. Cale raised a brow. They didn't trust me before I ran into a bonfire to save you. Now they just think I'm either dangerous or stupid. Possibly both. Which, honestly, is fair. Her smile flickered. I told you already. No one would have done what you did. Not here. Not for me. Cale leaned against a glowing tree trunk, trying not to look impressed when it hummed beneath him. And why's that? You allergic to heroics? Or is it a cultural thing? No saving princesses on Tuesdays kind of rule. The humor tugged her lips into another smile, but then she grew serious. I'm not just anyone. My family rules. Or did. The fire wasn't an accident. It was aimed at me. Cale whistled. So I didn't just save some random citizen. I crashed straight into your royal assassination attempt. Perfect. My vacation gets better every hour. You joke, she said softly. But you don't understand what this means. By saving me, you've placed yourself in the center of a struggle you never asked for. Cale chewed on that a moment. Yeah, well, not the first time. Last time I ended up stuck in a moon jail with a guy who thought he was married to his hover bike. Point is, I've been in worse situations. Ellara gave him a long look, ears angled sharply. You make light of everything. Survival tactic, Cale admitted. If I stopped joking, I'd have to admit how often my life is hanging by a thread. Easier to laugh while I'm dangling. For the first time, Ellara laughed fully, not the quick chuckle he'd heard before. The sound seemed to ripple through the glowing plants, making them pulse brighter, as though they approved. Cale grinned despite himself. Their moment was cut short when a faint hum shivered through the air. Ellara stiffened, ears snapping upright. A thin shimmer appeared a few paces away, like heat waves bending the air. Then the shimmer solidified into a figure, tall, cloaked, holding a blade that pulsed with white energy. Cale groaned. Of course. Can't even flirt in peace without an assassin popping up. Do you people have no sense of timing? The cloaked figure lunged. Ellara darted aside with unexpected speed, ears streaming behind her like banners. Cale, armed with nothing but sarcasm and half a ration bar, ducked instinctively. The assassin's blade carved through the glowing tree, which screamed like a broken engine. Cale scrambled for anything useful, His hand closed on a discarded gardening tool, some sort of spade that vibrated faintly when activated. He brandished it like a sword. Back off. I've been known to overwater houseplants, and I won't hesitate to use this. Elora snatched a small sphere from her belt and hurled it. The sphere burst midair into a lattice of light, wrapping the assassin in strands that crackled with electricity. The figure convulsed, then vanished in another shimmer, leaving only the smell of scorched ozone. Kale lowered his makeshift weapon, breathing hard. So that happened often. People popping out of thin air to murder you in glowing gardens. Elora pressed a hand to her chest, steadying herself. More often than you'd think. Fantastic. And here I was hoping for a quiet evening. She turned to him, her gaze steady. Now you see. Saving me wasn't just an accident. It's a chain. Once it begins, it pulls you in deeper. Kale sighed, dropping the vibrating spade. Great. So instead of unloading fruit and running, I'm now on some cosmic hit list. I really need to renegotiate my life choices. Elora's ears flicked upward in amusement, but her eyes softened. You could still leave. Kale considered it. His ship was fueled. His cargo was still intact. Nothing technically bound him here except one very stubborn instinct. He looked at her and shrugged. Yeah, but then who'd make the bad jokes? Her laughter came again, brighter this time, filling the garden until the plants glowed like a captured sunrise. Kale felt the weight of danger pressing in on all sides, but for once, he didn't mind. Kale's ship had never felt so cramped. It wasn't that the vessel was small. It had 3 bunks, a galley that could almost fit 2 people at once, and an engine room held together by equal parts duct tape and optimism. No, the problem was that Elora was inside it, sitting very straight in the co-pilot's chair, ears flicking every time the ship made one of its usual wheezes. Does it always sound like it's dying? She asked as the engine gave a cough. Dying. No. Wheezing dramatically for attention. Yes, Kale replied, tapping the console. She's sensitive. Don't insult her or she'll sulk and refuse to jump to orbit. Happened once. We drifted for 12 hours while she processed her feelings. Elora raised a brow. You're saying your ship sulks? Absolutely. She's got a personality. Stronger than mine some days. The ship rattled as if to prove his point. Elora pressed her lips together, but he saw the laugh trying to escape. They were airborne, skimming the upper atmosphere. The city below was a patchwork of fire scars and dim towers. The assassination attempt in the garden had changed everything. Elora was no longer just a rescued stranger. She was the center of a storm, and Kale, against all his better judgment, had planted himself right in the middle of it. So, he said, care to explain why assassins keep phasing in and out around you like you got a bounty on your head? Elora's ears folded back slightly. Because I do. My cousin believes the line of succession belongs to him. I stand in his way. Succession, Kale repeated. As in crowns and thrones? Great. Perfect. I've gone from fruit vendor to unwilling royal bodyguard. I should start charging by the hour. You could still leave. Stop saying that. Kale muttered. Every time you do, I feel like the universe is eavesdropping and planning some new disaster just to keep me here. As if on cue, the ship's alarm blared. A red warning flared across the console. Incoming projectile. Kale swore. See, that's on you. Elora gripped the chair as the ship lurched sideways. A bolt of plasma seared past the hull, close enough to rattle every loose bolt. Kale punched the thrusters, weaving between clouds like a drunk trying to dodge traffic. Who's shooting at us? Elora demanded. Let's narrow it down, Kale said. Option 1, people who want you dead. Option 2, people who want me dead. Option 3, everybody. My credits are on option 3. The attackers revealed themselves a moment later. 2 sleek pursuit craft, with wings that folded like blades, glowing runes etched along their hulls. Elora stiffened. They're from my cousin's guard. Kale grimaced. Family reunions sound intense around here. He jerked the controls, throwing the ship into a dive. Plasma streaks carved through the clouds behind them. Elora's hands hovered over the console as if she wanted to help, but didn't know how. Kale barked. Pull the lever on your right, the one with the yellow stripe. She yanked it. Panels slid open along the ship's belly, releasing a cloud of glittering metal spheres. The spheres detonated into a haze of electromagnetic static, frying the sensors of their pursuers. The guard craft veered off course, spinning before regaining control. Elora blinked. What was that? Chaff. Homemade. Works 90% of the time. And the other 10. Spectacular explosions. They shook free of pursuit, skimming lower until Kale dove into a canyon system outside the city. The ship groaned as it squeezed through narrow rock spires, but the pursuit craft didn't follow. At last, Kale set the vessel down on a ledge inside a cavern, the engine sputtering in relief. Elora exhaled, shoulders slumping. That was Tuesday, Kale supplied. For me, anyway. Silence hung for a moment before Elora looked at him, with something sharp in her gaze. Why do you stay? You had your chance to run. Kale fiddled with a loose switch on the console. Honestly, I ask myself that every 5 minutes. But then you keep nearly getting assassinated, and my reflexes kick in. Plus, you laugh at my jokes. That's rare. Usually people just groan and walk away. Her ears tilted upward, a sign he was beginning to recognize as amusement. You're reckless. True, but useful. You're alive, aren't you? She studied him, long enough that Kale began to squirm under the weight of her gaze. Finally she said, If you truly mean to stay, then I will tell you everything. And she did. She told him about the fire, about the spires that powered the city, about her cousin's plan to seize control by removing her from the line. She spoke of ancient laws written into their governance, laws that bound her bloodline to the survival of the city itself. If she died, the people would lose more than a ruler. They would lose the delicate balance that kept Veara systems alive. Kale whistled low. So it's not just politics. It's plumbing. Kill you, and the whole city's life support goes down the drain. Crude, Elora said, but her lips curved despite herself. Effective. That makes you the most valuable person on this rock. No pressure. Elora's smile faded. He won't stop. My cousin will keep sending assassins until I'm gone. Kale leaned back in his chair, stretching. Then it's a good thing I'm here. Annoying assassins is my specialty. That, and juggling fruit in zero gravity. She gave him a look that suggested she wasn't sure whether to laugh or groan. Kale took that as a victory. For the first time since the fire, Elora looked less like a fugitive and more like someone ready to fight back. Her ears lifted high, her eyes steady. Kale, still itching from smoke scars and bruises, grinned. All right, he said. Let's ruin your cousin's day. Kale had seen plenty of bad ideas in his life. Flying into a storm belt with half a shield generator. Betting his ship against a man who claimed he could drink liquid nitrogen. Trusting a navigation droid with a gambling addiction. But storming the spire where Elora's cousin had holed up. This was easily top 5. Maybe top 3. They stood at the base of the half-ruined tower, its upper levels cracked and scorched from the great fire. Elora adjusted the device strapped to her wrist, its screen pulsing with strange patterns that seemed to ripple with her heartbeat. Kale squinted at it. So that's the gadget that proves you're the rightful heir? It's older than our city, Elora said. It carries the code that binds my family to the spires. Right, Kale muttered. So, royal Wi-Fi password. Got it. She smirked despite the tension. You make light of everything. Survival tactic. I told you. They climbed the cracked stairway, shadows curling around them, until they reached the council chamber. Elora's cousin stood waiting, draped in finery that shimmered with circuitry. His ears curved high and sharp, and his voice carried that smugness unique to people convinced the universe had written their name in bold. You should have died in the fire, he said. The city would have been better for it. Funny, Kale cut in. Most family reunions just involve bad food and awkward hugs. You people really go the extra mile. The cousin's guards advanced, cloaked in phase armor that flickered like broken light. Elora stepped forward, raising her wrist device, its glow flaring. The chamber vibrated. The guards hesitated. The cousin snarled. Kale, meanwhile, produced a spherical gadget from his pocket. Bought this off a pirate in Sector 9. Said it's a universal disruptor. Or maybe a music player. Either way, figured now's a good time to test it. He pressed the button. The device emitted a screech so loud the guard's phase armor shorted out instantly, dropping them to the ground in a tangle of flickering tech. Also, somewhere in the corner, a vending unit turned on and started playing a jingle about soup. Kale winced. Okay, so both. Disruptor and music player. Multifunction. Worth every credit. Ellara's cousin roared, lunging with a blade of condensed plasma. Ellara met him head-on, her wrist device blazing brighter, channeling energy through the chamber's very walls. The spire groaned, alive, as if responding to her command. Kale dodged falling debris, shouting, "You two want to talk this out? Maybe with therapy? Or pie? I hear pie solves 90% of family disputes." Neither listened. The clash was raw, more than blade against code. Ellara's voice cut through the chamber. "I will not fight for revenge. I fight for our city. For our people." The cousin faltered. His blade wavered. The spire itself pulsed, as though weighing her words. Then, with a final surge, Ellara's device bound itself to the core, and the cousin's weapon flickered out, powerless. He collapsed, defeated not by her strength, but by the will of the city choosing her. Silence fell, broken only by the faint hum of restored energy flowing through the tower. Kale dusted off his jacket. "So, does this mean we won? Or do I need to throw another soup commercial at somebody?" Ellara laughed, breathless but triumphant. "It means the city is safe. For now." In the days that followed, repairs began. The citizens, once suspicious, now nodded to Kale as he walked the streets. Some even offered him food that didn't look entirely poisonous. Ellara took her place among the leaders, not as a pawn, but as a voice with fire in her veins and light in her eyes. Kale, for his part, packed his ship. He told himself it was time to move on, to chase the next job, the next star. But Ellara found him at the docking bay before he could leave. "You changed everything," she said softly. "Not just for me. For all of us." Kale scratched the back of his neck. "Yeah, well, I tend to trip into history by accident. Usually face first." She stepped closer, her gaze steady. "Stay." He hesitated. The galaxy was wide, and running was his oldest habit. But when he looked at her, at the long ears catching the light, at the unshakable resolve that had replaced her fear, he realized something had shifted in him too. He was tired of drifting. With a crooked grin, he said, "All right, but only if I get free snacks for life." Ellara laughed, and for the first time in years, Kale felt like he was exactly where he belonged. The fires had nearly consumed them, but together they had walked out of the smoke. Not broken, changed. And for once, Kale didn't feel like running. The end.